after the Endor hype train.
Archer's fantastic. I definitely consider her a friend.
We got to hold the line against the other team, and it was very cool.
You just want to make content and like just have something you can look back on. You win.
All of that time and energy, just so happy, so grateful to have been there to experience this.
Well, good evening to all my fellow nerds, and welcome back to another episode of Fast Tracked, a brand new podcast dedicated to the foam flinging community and the people that make it awesome. My name is Archer. I'm your dedicated veteran, admin, world-class, queen of the hype, and host of Fast Tracked. My cat Romeo just finished his round of endless affection because I have been traveling yet again for the past several weeks. And I'm just catching up myself on updates with upcoming HVZ events such as NWAR, Pennsylvania Survival Fest. We are coming together and building APOC, Armageddon. There's so many different flavors to choose from with the launch of this year's HVZ spring season. And that's pretty neat. But unfortunately, with this chaos, we tend to run into different badges of honor. Badges of honor, i.e., injuries, that we never exactly asked for. During these badges of honor, during these times of injury, we tend to run into the role that comes in to save the day. A often unappreciated role, and that, my friends, is the medic. Tonight, we're going to be talking with 3 medics spanned all across the United States. They're going to share with us their experiences in the large-scale HVZ scene and how their experiences can help us in making large-scale events safer for all. Tonight, we have Justin, aka Uni, out in Nebraska, who carries over 20 years of volunteer first responder experience in the competitive sports circuit. He is an admin and referee who has been in the hobby since 2006, with his most recent experience being this past Maryland Mayhem. Our second medic that we have tonight is going to be Nick. Many of you have seen him at Mayhem as well. He also goes by Ramen. He is based out in Maryland and will be the head medic for this year's Pennsylvania Survival Fest. He is a certified emergency medical responder, basic life support, and OEC patroller with the National Ski Patrol. He's basically a rather spicy trauma veteran, with his most recent experience, as I had mentioned, being at Maryland Mayhem. And then our third medic for tonight, we have Josh, otherwise known as Turkey, who is located out in Wisconsin, who is the co-founder of Nomad in Madison, Wisconsin. He carries 17 years of foam flinging experience. He is also a scout leader who is CPR, lifeguard, and wilderness first responder certified. His most recent experience, ironically in the same weekend, was Boiler Dome 2024, and he will also be a medic at Penn State Survival Fest coming up in just a few weeks. Let's kick things off with the question that I love to ask all of my guests, starting with Uni. How did you get into the hobby, and why Nerf?
Oh, I think I got started pretty close to the very beginning. I mean, somewhere probably in like 2001 or better. I mean, it was something where like still to this day, my most cherished blaster is probably like my '03 Tech Target. Thing's a blast, but I mean, it was just hanging around at college, sitting around with a bunch of friends, and we're like indoors. It was either too hot or too cold for whatever else, and shoot, something like Nerf. I mean, yeah, not a huge mess, but yet you can totally annoy people with stuff at all hours. It was an absolute blast. And then, it evolved over time. I love how it just is the, science and athletics meets toys. And then I got into coaching a lot of other sports and then, pulling kids around to those events, travel tournaments. Man, other sports, what's the thing to do to keep people busy? And you know what? Running around hotels with Nerf blasters and stuff like that it just became an absolute blast. And as things have picked up, now the competitive scene is it just adds a whole nother dimension from everything else I've experienced.
Very cool. So you come from the pre-Maverick days, from my understanding.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I skipped the Maverick. I was not a lover of it.
So for me, it was like I got to college. I was looking through the like club catalog trying to see what orgs there were, and when I saw HVZ, it was kind of the perfect combination of my forgotten love of foam flinging and backyard wars when I was a kid, and also it's just good, goofy fun to trick me into staying active. It's one of those I hate going to the gym, but I like hiking and stuff during the summer, and I like skiing in the winter, and so you got to like keep in shape.
Hmm.
So got to make it fun.
And yet people knock on it because it's goofy and it's silly. Meanwhile, it's probably some of the best shape you're gonna get in because you don't know you're exercising.
Jumping off of the goofy hobby, I had done airsoft as a kid in high school and kind of trailed off of it. And when I went to college, I went to school in Ohio back in those Maverick days. Saw these weirdos running around campus uh, with the green armbands and went, "What are they doing?" And had to get in on it right away. I think that was like the second semester our campus ever had HVZ, and it was just a blast running around with two Mavericks tied together with a length of shoelace or a bunch of socks. I feel like I've been in the hobby forever. I've seen the NIC days and lots of creativity of people nerding out about building their own gear, and now we've got 3D printers and fly and brushless systems, and it's amazing what people have come up with.
Has anyone ever asked you the airsoft question?
Probably, but I'm willing to hear it again. The airsoft scene where I grew up was kind of intense. They were all in, like everyone had to have the best gear ever, and it started to get worse and worse, which is probably why I started drifting away from it. And when I found Nerf, here with my nerdy fellow people who just wanted to have fun.
So why don't we talk about that a little bit? Why don't we talk about your first events and what that was like for each of you?
Oh man, I mean, since yeah, I'm the old guy, I guess. I mean, I started out near the beginning of when it peaked on campuses, or even started on campuses. So I think my first couple were down at like Columbia and Rolla. I ended up in Athens, and so I mean, they were smaller groups at that time, but we also had a lot more freedom for some of those. It was all HVZ really back then, but you had more freedom in the buildings. It was probably before admin got too worried about things, and before some of the school shootings and stuff happened that got everybody deservedly uptight. But you would start, I mean, in a simple auditorium, and something chaotic would ensue, and you would have to even work your way out of the buildings, and then off into campus and all over campus. And those were some of the more fun ones to me, have always been when you're actually trying to work your way out of the buildings. It feels a lot more like you're in some kind of anime or video game or something, because yeah, when it's really heavily planned, I mean, it almost always starts outdoors and whatnot. So it's really fun to be able to work your way out of the buildings. I kind of miss that part a little bit on some of them.
So you had indoor and outdoor play, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it was both.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
We had some of that too. I went to Case Western in Cleveland. We were like in the second or third wave of schools who got HVZs after Goucher, and you could tell that people were not quite sure of how the game would play yet. The dorms were off limits, but the rest of campus was fair game. So there was definitely firing from balconies to lobbies below and all of that. That was a lot of fun. I remember probably my favorite mission from that first game, or those first couple of games, was this overnight escort mission where we had to defend an NPC player to as we escorted them around campus. It was started like Friday night and it ended Sunday morning, and you just had to defend yourself after wave of zombies with whatever sleep you could get. And I remember that as being probably the best HVZ game of those early days of playing the game.
There used to be something actually at like a state park and campground out in Kansas a number of years back. They got wiped out by COVID. It was called Weekend Survival Challenge, and you legitimately had to. It was Friday through Sunday, and you were fighting for your your room and board kind of thing. You had to figure out your tent. You had to figure out meals out and about. It was the whole thing for like 2.5 days.
Yeah,
That sounds
having to
like
set
fun.
up like overnight guard rotations.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
I don't know if yeah, Ramen. What was your first event? Was it Maryland or PA
Uh,
or?
so my freshman year, uh, I was busy the weekend of the three events that I knew existed, which was my club's invite, UMBC, Penn State's invite, and End War. So my sophomore year, I was super excited to have my like HVZ invite debut, but it was also the spring of 2020.
Oh no.
Yeah, so I got to
Yummy.
just sit on that and wait until my first invite ended up being End War 22 in RIT.
That's a hell of a first experience. I'll say
Yeah.
that much.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it was something.
But you had a good time out of it, yes?
Oh yeah, no, I had a good time, and it was kind of funny because like I could tell that some people were a little worried because they're like, "Don't worry, Ramen, like it gets better. There's really good events." I'm like, I mean, yeah, it's not 100% amazing butterflies and rainbows, but like I'm just excited to be here. Like this is my first time ever doing this. I have nothing to compare it to. You could be absolutely god awful, and I'm like, wow, this is the best invite I've ever experienced. So yeah, yeah,
I think that was the event that actually kind of woke up the crowd on, hey, maybe we ought to have people keeping an eye out for, yeah, whether it be medics or something of that nature or better crowd control and, more advanced kind of modding kind of stuff. Because, yeah, I think, yeah, if I remember that, I mean, that really feels like that was about that pivoting point where people really started to care more about that role.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Is it safe to say that all three of you were at End War 2022 then?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And that said, there's so many people there, we probably never even saw each other.
When, I'm not sure if it was that event specifically or sometime prior, when and how did you help somebody after witnessing an injury for something as silly as this? And what was that like for you?
trying to think because I've been pretty fortunate where, at least in a nerfing context, the worst that I've had to deal with is give someone a concussion test. So I haven't had to like do any splinting or pack a wound or anything real bad like that. So nothing like traumatically memorable. Um, but if I had to guess, my first was probably someone who stepped weird or juked and twisted their ankle, and I had to help them hobble off.
Yep. Ice packs and scrapes and abrasions. I have just a huge stack of second skin ready in my kit for.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that probably gets exactly where my first experience of it was too, and it wasn't even as a formal one, but I carried around the gear anyway. But yeah, it's one of those things that like if you're always backpedaling, and then all of a sudden there's stairs or even just a skip in the sidewalk. Oh yeah, somebody's gonna bite it, and yeah, that was my first run-ins with it, where I was like, maybe I ought to keep on packing this equipment and just always plan on trying to help out because yeah, it doesn't matter whether or not they're the most cautious player or not. I mean, if it's at night or somebody's jumping out around a corner, somebody's going to trip or slip on something, and yeah, you're going to bite it.
A lot of campuses have those raised curbs around their grassy sections, and I've seen far too many people take a step backwards and
Hmm.
back of the head just on even the grass is not really that soft.
yeah, especially with how much pedestrian traffic packs up down the soil, it's pretty firm.
Yeah, whether it's somebody coming around a corner, up over a box, something like that, or honestly, yeah, zombies just running in for the tag and somebody misjudging that distance and speed. Um, I,
Yeah.
yeah, frequently those are it is person to person collision for one reason or another. They did not measure each other up.
The worst I've seen is two zombies going for the same human. They're both tunnel
Yeah.
visioned on the human, don't notice each other, and just boom, both of them
Oh,
full speed.
oh, oh no.
Yeah, I did martial arts for several years, and one of the first things they teach you is how to fall so that you don't whack your head and concuss yourself.
Hmm.
Useful skill.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, when I came to visit you, actually, it feels like a lifetime ago. It was, I think it was early March. It was around the time that I was recording the last episode. But so I went to go visit Josh for work and just, coming to visit anyway in Wisconsin. And he was showing me around Madison, and we were talking heavily about the medics episode and everything that we're discussing now, and we were also discussing gear choices and how it's advanced with each new event that we go to as nerfers. And so I was curious with the three of you, why don't you describe a little bit about your loadouts? You could talk about different blasters that you use if you want, but I'm also curious in how you manage just your regular gear gameplay, as well as you had mentioned it a few times, the things that you pack out as a medic. How do you balance between the two?
So I guess I'll start. I mentioned I have a bunch of second skin because I see so many people who, skin a knee, eat it, and their palms are scraped up. So I have that. Also, I have a couple those crushable ice packs in the gachapon containers for just pulling out and helping with a ankle. Those are the things I seem to consume the most in my gear, but other basics like I have aspirin and Tylenol and a flashlight to do the concussion check because that always seems to come up once or twice. I think the most recent thing I added to my med kit for on my person was some sterilization solution to help rinse out really deep abrasions because someone really bit it at the last event and their hand was just all torn up and you can't put a band-aid on that first, so we gotta deal with it, clean it before we get do anything else. I have a bigger kit that I have with my gear, but like anyone else, I'm trying to keep as little as possible when I'm huffing it across campus, right?
And you're actually playing too, so the
Yep.
balance is it's a
That is,
dance.
it is a huge dance. Um, Personally, yeah, it depends on how much I committed to being the medic ahead of time. But if if I'm trying to run light and I didn't officially commit one way or another, I kind of have like a 6x8x2 little case that I can tuck mostly into like the small of my back. Um, at the bare minimum, yeah, I mean, you're gonna have a flashlight, and rather than second skin, I'm a huge tape guy. And I probably have about three different kinds of tape because everybody's, hot, sweaty, dirty, and so you can't ever get the right thing to stick on. A
There's
band-aids
never enough
never
tape.
band-aids never hold. So,
No, and there's just
um,
never enough tape in general.
no, I don't think so either. And
Never.
so I have like a roll of each kind. But lately, then I have expanded some even to get proactive enough, partly because I have been in with a lot of kids on sports, but now I've added sunscreen to the repertoire. I've added a little bit of candy and sugar for certain people. And yeah, that it seems really weird and basic to say it, but I've added water. It's bizarre to say that sometimes, but it's a huge thing. Um, but otherwise, yeah, if I'm running that big bag and much more of that official kit or something like that, yeah, it's got all the standard stuff in it. But then a lot of times lately, I mean, I love playing, say, sniper class in a lot of different Nerf games. But if I'm running any sort of medic role, I guess I'm just going two sidearms. I'm just running a couple of pistols off my hips. Keeps at least one hand free. A lot better to balance. That way you aren't going to bite it. Because yeah, you got to be able to maneuver out there. Because yeah, we are. We're I don't know. We're playing a game. We're trying to play that HVZ or play something like that, and yet try to be at least a halfway real medic at the same time. It's kind of a weird balance of let's be serious, but yet I'm here to play too.
Hmm. We were going
Um,
in style too, so
Absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely take advantage of the fact that I have not yet hit 30 because I take my ski patrol pack with like
You
minimal
baby.
changes. Well, because it's one of those, I don't like my bag is probably like 15 pounds of medical gear. Um, and so I don't like change anything because this way I know where everything is. I don't have to think about it. And if I have more stuff than necessary, cool, it's just more of a challenge. But I have like splinting stuff, I have gauze, I have tape, I have like a tourniquet, I have a CPR mask, I have way more than I need. So I just go massive overcompensation.
But you're trained to use it as opposed to,
Yeah, yeah,
me,
yeah,
where I've always felt my role is much more just initial response triage, wait until the really, really professionals get there and whatnot. So yeah, to carry around something like an AED or something like that. I mean, okay, now I'm pretending to be a doctor. That's gone too far.
yeah. I have a couple friends in the hobby who are especially accident prone, and they carry their own supplies for whoever's patching them up, and that's always greatly appreciated.
Yeah, I try to have people in my squad carry their own roll of athletic tape because if nothing else, it'll stick to itself. You
Yep.
could tie it around whatever and whatever needed.
So when we're talking about gear, right, and when you have to adjust for different types of events, have there ever been any major adjustments when dealing with different game types? We'll dabble a little bit into competitive, HVHVZ, which I have yet to experience, and also a little bit of campus clash that had just happened. So I'll start off with Robin and Uni here. So both of you have quite a bit of experience when dealing with competitive and HVZ and or the injuries that are associated with them. So how would you say the injuries differ, at least for what you're looking out for, between competitive and HVZ? Would you say there's any major differences?
Uh, the easy one is HVZ. You get more exhaustion injuries, so like heat exhaustion,
Mhm.
dehydration, hyponatremia, which is like low electrolyte levels, that kind of stuff. So in my bag for HVZ days, I'll have a bottle of water with the like sports tip so that I can use it for irrigation if I need to. And then I also have one of those little lunch packs of Pringles because that gives you both some sugars and also salt to help replace electrolytes. And if people don't want to drink water, you give them Pringles and now they really want to drink water.
This is true. This is true.
Medic likes it.
Yep.
Yep.
So salty.
Yeah, I learned that one from being a camp counselor.
Nice.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because little kids like they display all the symptoms of dehydration, and you know exactly what's wrong, and you got to get them to drink water, but they're like, no, water's gross. I don't want water, but they like food, so if you give them a little salty snack, then they get thirsty, and then they start drinking the water, and you don't have to force them to.
And of all the different dietary habits out there, I don't know hardly anybody who won't eat a potato chip.
Yeah,
Solid. I like that one. Otherwise, though, like in the competitive world, I've seen a lot. You have less. It feels like you get less of the concussion action because generally the two teams know where each other are. You don't have anybody running around a corner per se and slamming into each other, and you don't necessarily have like a zombie trying to tag somebody either. So I do find it seems like there are less, say the concussion type of incidences that go on in competitive. And probably the obvious thing that does happen a lot more in competitive is like, yeah, higher velocity projectiles hitting something they shouldn't, whether it be the eyes, mouth. Now, I think I've seen one broken nose. I wasn't professional enough to say for sure, but it sure led to a lot of blood. But those things I feel, because HVZs, that's a much lower cap kind of game. And so I feel like darts are less likely to hurt somebody point blank anyway. But yeah, you shoot, even with 50 foot of range in some competitive games, you're still going to do a little bit of damage if it hits in the wrong spot. So, yeah, I do. I feel like that's kind of the obvious choice where you're going to see those things more in the competitive games.
Would you say that you've ever dealt with folks who have a loss of electrolytes in competitive, or is that just not something you've seen?
Uh, I don't know to the point I'd say like delirious necessarily, but I mean, without it, almost all athletes and people playing, games at that high level, there's a lot of people who don't know their limits. And yeah, whether heat exhaustion, dehydration, there's still a lot of that. It's not necessarily going to be say like sunstroke kind of thing, but definitely dehydration still a real thing.
Yeah,
For sure, for sure. Yeah.
yeah. It's one of those shorter like games with longer breaks when you're waiting for a tournament bracket to come back around to you. Gives you lots of time to replenish fluids, eat a snack, all that stuff. But that doesn't necessarily mean that people do those things.
No, you're panicking trying to fix your blaster, get those darts into the exact pinpoint spot at the right velocity.
Yeah.
I know I get way too obsessed. I'm like, no, no food right now.
I don't need it. Oh no.
Yeah, then you get a little dizzy. You're like, oh, I screwed that up.
I have never done Campus Clash, but I've heard a lot about it. And I feel, correct me if I'm wrong, that it's a game mode that's pretty unique to Purdue and Indiana specifically. Why don't you describe a little bit of your experience from Boiler, including any injuries that might be associated with that game type?
Yep, I'm pretty sure uh, Blaster League of Tag or Boiler League of Tag, it's a game unique to them. It's an area control capture control game played on their main campus where there's lots of go to objective point, capture it, keep moving. So even though there's a common place and they play it around the lecture hall where they use for staging, a lot of the gameplay is fast moving in big arcs around the campus. So you get a lot of the twisted ankles, the skinning on the concrete. Um, Thankfully, with the centralized location, it allowed for less travel back to the full kit if it went for the couple people I needed to help out there. But yeah, same as HVZ basically. More of the heat exhaustion, people not knowing or seeing other people as they're coming around a corner.
Is that a hilly campus or is that somewhere along the flat
It's pretty flat.
geography? It's flat. Okay.
It's got a couple small hills, but mostly flat.
I'm sure it helps with something like HVZ where there's so many people around more times than not to help you out as opposed to when you're by yourself and it's all right, let's handle
Mhm.
it by myself.
Yep, there's usually someone who's witnessed it, so even if the person doesn't quite know what happened, their buddy can tell you, oh, they slipped down this hill, they skidded on that step, whatever.
Yeah, I've found that injuries in HVZ tend not to happen when a human is just by themselves because there's no reason to do dumb things that get them injured.
But I have found that, I mean, there are times when having too many people around is certainly problematic. And, one, you just want to give that person space, give them room to breathe, but also, yeah, too many hands, ruin the broth or something like that. Uh, yeah, you sometimes just get too many people in there, and sometimes it's people who don't know the right thing to do, and they're, choosing the wrong things. So, yeah, I think, after they've done their best as a citizen or whatnot to try and do their part. I mean, I think trying to get them back is, you know, a big deal. And yeah, then that gives you a little bit of time to, or a little bit of ability to kind of even talk to the person that is actually injured, get their take on it as opposed to everybody talking for them.
Mhm.
If everything has stopped and everybody's sitting there watching them and, it, they're already, they're feeling the pain. They're probably feeling the heat of the injury and
It's scary.
they're really scared and the whole weekend is ruined and or an event, whatever. they are really freaked out. So to me, very much so, trying to get them to breathe and to, I don't know, find a little bit of levity and just, yeah, calm down some. I mean, I don't know. I always find that a little bit of a joke or a laugh, just, I don't know, it can bring a little levity and a little bit of chill to them.
Have you ever dealt with cases of adrenaline? Because I speak as a living example. When I had gotten injured last year, I was hopped up on adrenaline, but at the same time, my friends were like 2 feet away from watching me just in utter pain. So it's like you have people that like you try to tough it out, but then you have your friends that are like actually worried for you. So I feel like there's a level where you have to have a middle ground because it can't be all adrenaline because then you'll probably hurt yourself more. Have
Mhm.
any of you dealt with that type of situation?
Yeah. Um, that's another benefit of like giving people that cooldown time is you give their adrenaline time to drop down and then they notice that, oh wait, actually my ankle really hurts too. And then you check that
Yep.
out and make sure that that's fine. Because I'm definitely guilty of the I fall, I pop back up, declare myself good to go, and then 5 minutes later I go ow, ow, ow every time I step on my left foot.
I've definitely had a couple people try and shrug it off, tell me that they were perfectly fine. Usually they'll listen once or twice. It's been okay, fine. You know where I am. Come back to me when you're injured or when you actually feel it.
Do they
Yeah.
feel it?
At yeah, at the end of the day, it's not worth arguing. Someone wants to keep walking, they'll get 20 paces and then be like, "Oh, right, it actually does hurt." That's I guess a great reason for like every squad needs someone with at least a little bit of experience, even just basic first aid, so they can watch their friends, their fellow players, because we can't be everywhere to see everyone.
Having someone be that designated role, you mean,
Yep.
in their little local group?
Or even just if everybody sits down and watches a half-hour class on concussion protocol kind of thing, or basic head trauma behavior. I mean,
Yeah.
it it doesn't have to be a big certification or whatnot. I mean, honestly, you can do a lot of good with some really basic knowledge.
Yep. A lot of
Mhm.
workplaces have some. Hey, let's teach you some basics, some CPR, some
Mhm.
seizure, some of the basic signs to look for, which is immense help.
For younger people involved with the game and whatnot. I mean, a lot of times colleges offer that stuff, cheap, free. Um, like high schools even have offered those kinds of classes on some basic levels anyway. So, yeah, as you get older, hopefully your business or your place of work will actually pay for that. But even for younger players, I mean, most of the time the schools will offer something with it or some sort of assistance at the very least.
Do you feel that enough people are signing up to be medics? Because I'm seeing that there's more signups that are available to the community. Hey, come help us out. We need, if you have some first aid experience, EMT, whatever, we'd love to have you. Or do you feel that more work needs to be done?
I mean, I would love if everyone had a certification, and the second that someone gets a scrape, they start drowning in gauze and tape. But like, I think something to shoot for is just encourage people to get those like really easy low level where they can be that like first on the scene, help them out, and then that helps reduce the load on us and gets treatment started earlier, which is always good. But
Yeah.
it I think like it's one of those like the number of medics depends a lot on like the game size and also on the design, where ideally you have a medic in every human group that you plan on breaking your uh, humans into during missions, or failing that, like have a medic with the zombies, because the zombies cause humans to panic and then injure themselves. So
One, I think there are a lot of people out there who are just they're scared of it. They're scared of it whether they might be a blood and guts kind of that's not their thing, or they might be scared of helping from the concern of like, does this put me in liability? Um,
Mm, yeah.
and so I think there are a lot of people who are very hesitant to assume that kind of role, and yet there is a greater demand for them. And if this hobby keeps growing, I suspect there's going to be an even greater and greater demand because, as the events get bigger, all right, now all of a sudden we have hit that magical insurance threshold. And insurance companies, they only want so many people together without, some EMT type of protection or other kind of medic protection. It becomes very mandatory to even the terms and conditions. And so there's a greater and greater demand. And if this hobby keeps growing, there's a greater and greater need. And I, my general opinion is, yeah, okay. And honestly, I'm not a huge blood and guts guy. It's not really my favorite thing. But there is a huge demand. I mean, if you can handle, I'll say, basic scrapes and, exhaustion and concussion kind of things, that is still very useful and helpful.
Ramen, you have your event coming up, and you have so many of us signed up already. I'm happy that there's a master list out there for Survival Fest of known medics for the event.
we have hit my like target that I wanted to get like at least this many, which goes to the thing I said earlier of I want at least one medic to be able to be present in each human group based on like the maximum number of ways we're going to divide the humans. Um, but I will never say no to more medics. Like more medics is mo better. Um, but also with the whole like peek behind the event organizer curtain, kind of going to what Uni was saying is like, yeah, the people like with the now putting out forms instead of just that informal like, hey, I'm a medic, I have a med kit. Uh, the event organizers know, um, what people's abilities are, and
Mm-hmm.
they won't make you go out of your depth if it is more serious than something that first aid can deal with. They know how to get in contact with the other people who can deal with that situation.
Do you have a favorite moment as a medic? Anything that really sticks out?
Absolutely. Um, it, yeah, no, and it probably wasn't even too terribly long ago, and so I halfway did my best to cover it up. But I still laugh to myself all the time. But it was during one of those nighttime HVZs. It was in a much more rural kind of setting, and I didn't know the terrain at all. Nobody was even allowed to come show up until after dark, and so you couldn't pre-scout it. Nobody knew what they were really getting into, and I was working as the medic and like rear guard kind of thing. You're running around more or less in a farm field kind of rural-esque kind of atmosphere, and I could hear there's a couple of players definitely doing like the whole growling zombie, on the prowl coming up on us, and you're trying to keep your ears up and this and that. And one of the guys on our squad was like, "Oh man, my hand is worse than I thought." And I'm like, what are you talking about? Everything is closing in on us, and like, all right, dude, all right. But and nobody could really hear me to like take an official timeout, but either way, we would have been safe. But so I'm trying to just find a way, and I could not get my scissors to cut through that tape at the time. So I'm trying to just rip it off with my teeth, just so I can get him halfway taped up. What he also failed to tell me is that apparently he had cut his hand on the side of a dock because apparently we were on the side of a lake or a pond, and as I'm trying to rip the tape with my teeth, I took that one step back to brace myself and more or less went, you know, I more or less rolled down into said lake or pond. And I was just like, oh man, you guys. And so I'm
Did you
just
take him with
flopping
you?
around. No, I didn't. He was looking at me. So he just has his hand held up still, like, I don't know, I'm bleeding. Is anybody gonna do something? I'm like, I'm drowning. How about we deal with me now? I've got my own issues. And yeah, but yeah, I'm still trying to be cool. And then I quick get out of there. No big deal. I'm okay. Walk it out. We're good. We're good. And I don't know that anybody else saw it other than the kid I was with. But oh god, it was. I don't know. I can't get that one out of my head here recently. That's one of them where there's absolutely no love whatsoever. But you try to do the good thing or the right thing, but I was just wet and cold the rest of the night. And it got borderline into freezing conditions that night. And I was just like, oh man, what a train wreck.
It's okay. We know what happened. We
Oh
thank
yeah,
you for your service.
oh yeah, and I tore my MCL in the process.
You didn't need that, did you?
No, no, no,
No,
nobody
no,
needs those
no.
anymore.
If we're talking about like exciting moments, probably at Maryland Mayhem this year, where I did a baton pass with an inhaler, where someone,
That was crazy.
yeah, someone got into a collision and it knocked the wind out of them. And while they're trying to catch their breath, it triggered their asthma. And so they're, I don't know if it was their friend, boyfriend, someone who knew them, was nearby and knew where their inhaler was back in the safe zone. Which, PSA, if you have an inhaler, please carry it on you during gameplay. Um, but basically, he sprinted off to the safe zone to go grab it. And so I jogged after him so that when he was coming back, I was still fresh, grabbed it from him, and just booked it back to where the patient was. And then passed it off and got the asthma back under control, and they were good.
End war 2 years ago, Rochester. Our squad had teamed up with another group earlier in the day, and we got separated. As it happens. Later mission, I think it was the last mission of the day, Saturday, and these couple players come up to me. It's like, you're the one who had the medical supplies. Our friend, he twisted his ankle, and just the recognition. Yeah, I have my bright, vibrant purple hair, and being that beacon that someone could come out and find me. It's like, oh right, I'm here. I'm ready to help, and pulled out one of those ice packs I had and was able to walk him to his car and get him situated. And end of the day, he's not going to play for the rest of the game. So just nice, quiet, easy. But being recognized as that person who can help was,
The feeling is awesome.
yeah.
There are a lot of benefits to being a medic out there, though. Like I said, I mean, your crew will generally try to protect you too. And so if you're actually, say, you don't think you're that great of a nerf shooter, you know what? Volunteer to be the medic. Let your crew carry you. You could still be part of the action.
Hmm.
Yeah, we mentioned what happens in comp versus HVZ or whatnot. The other thing that happened at Maryland Mayhem, and it does happen more at competitive stuff because they at least sometimes will get indoor venues, typically like a sports field, is you get horrible turf burn stuff or
Oh
turf burn
yeah.
the death by 1,000 razor blades kind of thing. And I've had that play in other sports, but um, there's one guy on double XLs who, I couldn't quite tell whether he just physically decided to drop to his knees or he tried to do a wicked slide in into cover like you actually do, Archer. But he didn't have knee pads, and that was the
Why, thank you.
problem. And so you can, you slide in from like 8 feet away and stop on a dime. He just like vertical dropped, and there's this horrible thud sound and everything else. And oh yeah, wicked horrible turf burn. It was nasty, but that that is another thing that does happen way more probably in competitive versus HVZ. But turf burn's not any terribly different anyway, other than a scrape. Other than it's not terribly different from a scrape, although I might argue as a former competitive sports player that there's some really gross stuff in AstroTurf that it might be more dangerous. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least with HVZ, people are more willing to sit out and recuperate, unless the next mission is finale, in which case they are going on that mission no matter
It's
what.
true. Yeah. If they fought for 8 hours, they're gonna stick it after that last one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The do or die mentality. Just
Hmm.
we're all a crazy bunch. All right. While we come to wrap things up here, my fellow gents, any advice for folks interested in becoming a medic, or for the admins listening? Any advice for admins wondering how they can make their games safer and better?
Said several times, get some basic training. There's lots of free options out there. If you want to go for something a bit more, Red Cross or Heart Association have great courses. Crazy like me in doing those first responder, I did NLLS, National Outdoor Leadership Wilderness course. I know them and ECSI and Solo have great uh, programs out there that are not too expensive and cover a lot of the basics and then some for being able to be first responders. But yeah, whatever you can do to just contribute and take the load off of the actual EMTs when they show up does a hell of a lot.
I've had a lot of experience in putting together events, and some of my recommendations as it relates to the medics would be I do think that radios are still key. I've seen a
Mm-hmm.
couple events lately where people have tried to run all the communications through like a Discord setup, or, oh yeah, we'll just make a group chat or whatever, yeah, or even we'll call somebody when we need help. It that puts that responder or whoever else at a lot more pressure to like, okay, now I got to remember what contact I put in my phone or which number to dial or whatnot. And so I think, yeah, if it doesn't break your bank, and as we kind of heard, radios aren't, you can get the right deals if you time it right. I think radios are still a really key tool for, if you have, I don't know, if you have an event with a decent number of people and several medics that happen to be involved. And while the other thing I would suggest out there is, well, I don't know that any medic does it for the money or anything of that nature. Simple freebies or anything that you could offer, even if it is a lunch or a dinner or whatever else, at least lets them know they're cared about. They're more willing to come back and do it the second time, a third time for you and whatnot. Maybe they would come back and do it anyway, but it feels even less like an obligation for them and more like, yeah, there's a simple reward. They at least, while they don't have money, they still appreciate what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And that's huge because it keeps people coming back.
Yeah.
Yeah. On the topic of radios, Survival Fest is going to have two mod channels for radios. One is the actual like mods talking to mods, and the other is reserved for medics trying to get in contact with me, who will be the one monitoring that and trying to shadow the main group so that I can be like a quick response force to whichever group of humans got hurt. Um, yeah.
Do you have any mode of transportation for the event? So I don't know how that would work best. I'm used to people having like golf carts or things like
Right.
that. But say people are so stretched out across campus, are you're just gonna hightail and book it?
Yeah, so I'm just gonna be on foot, just kind of following where the action is, like trying to split the difference between groups if I can. And, if something goes down and there isn't a medic in the group, I'll be nearby. And if there is a medic in the group, I have my ridiculously oversized med pack to give them all the stuff they need and more.
While we wrap things up, Uni, where can we find you? Got any socials for
Oh,
us?
I was gonna say, I am too old for you guys. No, I don't run my own channels anymore or anything like that. But what I would do is I'd give a simple plug for the little bitty program we have out here in Lincoln called ONN. That said, KCNC down in Kansas City is a great place. And then just to support the Midwest, anybody who wants a really unique experience, you guys got to go out to Mall Mutation out in St. Louis. That
Mm.
is a Nerf experience in the Midwest that it doesn't resemble anything else that you guys have on the coasts right now. So if you can
It
make
really
that trip,
doesn't.
Yeah.
it's well worth it.
Are there any dates for this year yet or not yet?
I don't think they've announced. I don't think Mall Mutation has announced their official date this year, but it's
It's always
roughly the second or third week of October, I think.
Yeah, they usually put out a poll for
Yeah,
players to vote on to see when people want it to be, and then they schedule it based on that. And I don't think that poll has come out yet.
right.
Very cool plug. Yeah, I've so many East Coasters want to go out for Mall Mutation. It's just a matter of timing. But yeah, I know that event looks absolutely incredible. So
Yeah, there
yeah, we'll
there
have
were
to keep our eyes peeled on the date.
there were a few of us that drove like 20 hours out to the East Coast. Come on, East Coast. Some of you guys can drive the other way back to the middle of nowhere. Come on.
Hey, I came out the last Small Mutation Madness game.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'm gonna
We
be there
gotta
next
learn
year
from
too
you
if I
guys,
can.
us procrastinators. We're lucky if we can get people on the West Coast, but let alone anywhere around here.
I know, right?
But it is it is. I know for the Marylanders at least, like there's definitely a peak of interest. We gotta, yeah. We
Yeah.
once that date comes out, we definitely gotta make ourselves get out there. So
Mhm.
I feel like the obvious plug here is ramen. I feel like I know what your plug is gonna be, but you got any socials or anything?
So,
Anything you want to shout out?
I mean, I don't really have. I'm not like super active on social media, but my Discord is at Ramenari. So if you see me on there, I know there's another ramen somewhere out there in the hobby that I don't think I've met in person, but
You have an
we
official
have.
doppelganger. Congrats.
Well, yeah, we've come to a gentleman's agreement where he is ramen without the noodle emoji, and I am ramen with the noodle emoji. So, yeah, and then obviously the plug is come to Survival Fest. It's from May 31st to June 2nd at Penn State's campus, and it's going to be a great time.
Penn State. Penn State. Now your HVZ is fire, so that should be a really, really good event.
Yeah, and we have, we have moderators from all over, tons of different cultures. From like, we are splitting time with the game runner of the last End War, where they are also a Survival Fest mod this year, as well as running End War this year. We have people from RIT, a couple people from UMBC, Pitt, PTC, the list goes on. We just meld like a bunch of different cultures into one game. We even stole some mechanics from Mall Mutation Madness after going there and loving the wounded condition. So, yeah, if you've read through the rules doc, that's why the spitters are way scarier, and it looks just like being wounded.
So I also don't really do social very much. On Discord, I'm Turkey, the Hell Hydrate logo. If you see me at all on any of the Nerf Discords, I'm also our head mod for Nerf Outings Madison, part of the Badger Foam Games BFG up here in Wisconsin. We have a whole bunch of clubs starting to build up some momentum to bigger things soon. So don't have any plugs yet, but I promise we're working on it. There will be more from the Midwest sooner rather than later.
Are there any, without saying too much, any indoor events in the works? Or is that to be continued?
To be continued. Our clubs do regular things at airsoft arenas and this company that makes laser tag equipment, which is really cool. Had people come up from Frag Society from St. Louis to come play because they were just so excited about the weird play fields we have. But yeah, there's to say that Mall might have a sibling sooner rather than later is
Let's go.
It's phenomenal. So how you feeling here, Archer, then that you've brought on 3 people without social media?
Listen, we have all the event plugs, so I'm here. I'm for it. The more events, the better, man.
All good.
Yeah, my partner had just moved in, and she already kind of knew before, but just seeing the bench that I have, and she's already come out to APOC. The Uno guys love her, but with the events and just having going down to Maryland for practice, she already knows. She knows, like, are you traveling again? All right, well, let's sit down. Let's put it in the calendar. Let's see.
Yep,
Are you
my
booking any flights? All right, we'll do this. So,
yeah, my family has a calendar of making sure that someone is home to take care of the cats because most weekends I'm gone if it's HVZ season.
oh yeah, which is now. Um,
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
now is now is high time. High time for sure. Alrighty, friends. For those of you listening, this just about wraps up our episode on medics here on Fast Track. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to check out our YouTube and Spotify. Join in the conversation on our Discord server. Links are in the description below. Join the conversation, nominate on what episodes you would like featured on the podcast, and we'll be sure to keep the conversation going. Thank you so much to Uni and Ramen and Turkey for coming on for this episode. This was a lot of fun. I don't know about you guys, and we got a whole lot of insight going on here with all these events cropping up for the spring season. Tune on in for the next episode where we're going to be featuring Boomstick Mods, David from UMBC, and the Captain Xavier as we recap our trip to Retriever County from this past Maryland Mayhem 2024. Stay classy, stay awesome, and I'll see you all in the next episode.